So what our goal is for this site is that when I click this button, I want it to do something, right? That's what we're shooting for. So in order for that to work in JavaScript, and actually in other scripting languages as well, they call that an event listener. I want this object to listen for a specific event, and in this case, it's going to be click. I want it to listen for a click that's on it, and then when it has that listener, then it has an event handler, and basically it means what it does when that event does occur. So I need to put an event listener on this, and then a handler that will run when you click on it. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, so we need to target this button, apply a listener, and then a function that runs when that listener is executed. Okay, so go to your JavaScript. And just after this, we're going to put this inside of it just again to test. But so first we need to do is actually get a hold of the element. Okay, so if we look at here, the element I want to apply this to, where are you, is this one, this read more button. Now, luckily enough, we already added this ID called read more, RMBTN. So that's how I'm going to get a hold of it. So I'm going to do document. We're using the document object model. So the document as a whole is just called document, and then it has sub objects, right? So this is an object, this button is an object, this P is an object. Basically, your elements are all objects themselves. Okay, so we're going to do document dot get element. Oh, it's not showing up. Element by ID. So is it caps? Oh no, lowercase. Get element by ID. And then the element we want to get by ID is going to be the RMBTN, right? The room button. So I want to get that element. And then while we have that element on that, so again, document, that's the object we're getting hold of. We're going to run a function. This is a method that's built into it, okay? It's called a method when it's inside of an object, but it's a function, meaning it does something. You can execute it. So we have this, and then I'm going to send it this method. What it does is it looks for elements by IDs, and I'm giving it this information. So it's going to grab whatever element has that ID attached to it. Then we're going to say, again, we're going to do dot notation. So it's almost like now do this, right? It's almost like a file folder structure. So on that object, I want to add an event listener. Okay. And again, this is another method, but basically it's going to allow us to apply this. And this needs actually, when I'm hovering over, you can actually tell, it needs two arguments. We need to put a click. That's the event it's going to listen for. And then the other thing it needs is my event handler. And that's the thing that it's going to run, or that's going to happen when you click in this case. Okay, so most often the event handlers are just a function. So we're going to make a function, and I'm just going to call this function. I'm going to call it the read more function. That's just what I'm going to name it. And then we have to do a semicolon on the end, right? Every time you write a bit of code, the last, this is like the period of a statement, right? So one line of code is called a statement, and this is the punctuation. All right, so that's what it's going to do. So it's gonna find that ID. It's going to find the element with this ID. It's going to then apply an event listener that listens for click and runs a function called read more function, which currently will do nothing because we don't have a function like that. So I'm going to go ahead and make that function. So I'm going to do function. That's the keyword, lets it know that it is a function. Okay, function, and then we're just going to call it read more function. I already made it. And then it's going to have no parameters. Basically, remember how I called this method, which is a function, and we sent it this argument? That is what would go inside of here if we were calling this function. But if you look, I'm not sending it any information. I'm just telling it to run. So there's no parameter. It doesn't require anything being sent to it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put opening and closing braces, right? So put the little mustaches on the top and bottom. And then basically what's going to happen is that when you hear click, it's going to run this function. This is the function here. And then anything that's inside of these brackets will be run. And in this case, I'm just going to grab this here, Control X, and we're just going to paste in here, Control V. And let me just delete the top up here. And then we're going to save it. So go ahead and save it. It should look something like this. Yeah, so it should be working. Let's go ahead and let's test it. So actually I already got it there. So We'll just do this, Control R, and now you see it's missing, right? Because it's not there by default. But watch, if I click this, JavaScript is working. Okay? It's kind of weird that it actually gets rid of everything. I thought it would just pop up, but you never know. I thought it would just put it here, but it didn't. So anyway, but you can see it's definitely working. When we click the button, it's making JavaScript is working. So that's working. So that's good. So that means that our event listener is working. It's really good to start smaller so that we can, make sure that the event listener is working now, right? First, we made sure the script was working. Now we're making sure the event listener is working. And then the next one, we'll actually make it do the read more. We'll put the actual code of what we want to happen in here. But it's good just to kind of make sure things are functioning, that the basic elements are working before you start building up on things. In some ways, actually, the next part is actually simpler than these.